Hello there. Okay, so I've got a new painting I'm working on today, new to the stream. And this is a really cool image. I'm doing this as a commission, and this is a couple that got married and went up to Alaska and did a shoot. They flew a guy in, and the photographer did I say photographer? Yeah, they flew a photographer in just for this shoot up there. They did a bunch of pictures, you know, got everything they needed, and then they just left. So they flew up to Alaska, and they're on this glacier here. And so I'm doing, this is just the early stages still. I've been working on it for a little while, but I'm kind of just going in, and I'm keeping things simple at this point. I'm just using white and blue as sort of an underpainting. Some of this may be showing through kind of at the end of the painting. I'm kind of liking how this part looks right over here. So there's a lot going on in here, just of all these different little shapes happening in the ice, and it's that really, you know, like cold ice you only seem to see in the Arctic, where it's so thick that it's actually turning blue. And so there's going to be the clouds up above, of course, which is a pretty similar kind of color. And then down this little area over here, it's kind of interesting because it has sort of an aqua looking color, which is a little bit kind of greenish compared to some of the other stuff happening. So there's a lot going on in here. I'm just using what's my label is calling cerulean blue. It's not really cerulean, but it's what's just commonly known as a cerulean blue paint color, and I'm just mixing that with my white here. So I am going to get started now. You know what? I'm just looking over here. I've got a new setup today. Just oh, you know what? I gotta start one other thing real quick here. Got a new camera that I'm using today for the long shot, and I had to move it back further. It actually moved a little bit on its own. I think this will be a little better here. Okay, so live well, paint often. Thanks for stopping by, and I'm gonna get to it now. I'm gonna use the same brush I've been using for pretty much almost everything lately I've been streaming with. And I'm going to just go in there and start working on, I think I'm going to do a little bit on the left side today. Just feeling like I've got a bunch of things going on the right, and also be out of the way of the camera if I go on the left also. So I'm going to just kind of do that. And I don't really have to clean my brush off too much because this is what I was using it for last time. So I had to go on a little bit later today. Had to take care of some things, some stuff, and thinking I'll probably be painting about 2 hours tonight. So today's glitch was I had to reauthorize Facebook and LinkedIn, which doesn't happen until the actual time I'm going live. There's no notification for that, so you know, it's fun. So it would have been a little bit earlier if not for that, but anyway, it seems to be working okay now. And I'm going to just make a gradient here. Now this color blue tends to be a little, I'm going to get a little more than that. It tends to be a little bit on the matte side when it dries. So I've been adding a little bit of linseed oil in there just to kind of mitigate that. Give it maybe about 2 drops here. I don't have an issue with that for the white, so I'm not going to bother doing that for the white. And this is going to be really quick. I'm just going to get these colors out here and then get to it. Now I'm staying pretty light for a lot of what I'm doing here. Some of it's kind of approaching sort of a mid-tone. There's nothing really all that dark. And usually when I'm doing a layout like this, I mostly keep it fairly light. Partly because if I'm going to be painting over something, I don't want sort of a big dark line showing through the paint, because the paint is pretty much usually at least a little bit transparent, even the opaque colors. I'm going to get just a little bit more color, or a little bit more oil over here. And so something that I've noticed, which I've never heard anyone else talk about, is if the paint looks like it's matte while it's still wet, probably going to be matte when it dries. So a little bit of kind of not being quite as glossy is okay, but if it's looking really just matte when it's still wet, that could be to the point where it's going to be kind of an issue later and you can't really see the color so easily. Now I'm going to just bring this over here and get myself a color right around there like that. And get a little bit more. Okay. And I'm going to just actually take that and get a little bit of a lighter color also. So this is just real simple, 2 colors. It's nice when there's only 2 colors because you don't have to really figure things out. It's just left or right. Trying to mix the color a specific way. Okay, so now I am going to sort of make a line here. There's kind of a big ridge over here, and there's all this detail happening. It looks like it's kind of there's like sand or something from these mountains in the background. That's kind of a dark, almost near black color, and kind of gotten blown around. It was very windy on that day. You can see by the bride's hair. And so I want to just be really careful where I put this. I'm actually going to stand a little further back. I think I'm going to move my chair. I'm standing up today. I've been sitting for the streams before. Put my chair over this way. So when things are this organic looking, it may seem like it's not that big of a deal where you put lines and things. You know, if it's not all exactly the same, it's probably not that big of a deal, but it can kind of lead to things just sort of hanging up on you after a while, as far as like if you are starting to get into the details after a little while, you might start noticing more and more when things are not really in the same place as what your reference is showing. So even when there's this much extremely organic kind of shapes around, probably a good idea to try to get it pretty close to that if you can. If you're doing any kind of level of sort of realistic painting. So on this level, this part right over here, thinking I want to bring this up some more. A little bit more like that. This is a large painting. This is a 48 by 32, I think. This is definitely on the larger side. I haven't really, actually this is the biggest commission I've done, from left to right at least. Done a bunch of 30 by 40s. So, just kind of checking this now. I think this bump here is a little bit too much. I'm gonna bring this down. Maybe I'll bring that up. And I'm kind of looking at places where this line here sort of intersects, where like kind of where the bottom of the hands are is actually sort of on the same level as this. So I can see from that, it looks like this maybe needs to come up just a little bit right there. I'm gonna get some more white while I'm at it. Some of this is maybe a little bit too dark for this area that I'm working on. I'm using a lead white, which dries fast, which is good for underpainting. You don't have to add any dryers to it. You have to be careful with dryers because they can make the paint crack. So some people still, well, a lot of people still use them, but you have to be careful. There's also no stinky fumes, just using regular paint. See, different colors will dry faster than others, just the pigment. Just for whatever reason. Dries at different rates. some of the earth ones, you know, like burnt umber has a lot of clay in it. So that has to do with why it dries so fast. And I'm thinking maybe that's a better, you know, range for that, better level. Just gonna get rid of the original line by kind of smudging it in there. So, looking at where this little bump here is also compared to this mountain, and if I've gotten that mountain in the right spot, I think I could maybe bring this over actually a little bit more also. A little extra kind of attention to different things like this in the beginning really make a big difference of just getting things work out easier later on. Kind of like we're planning for retirement right now. Okay, let me just zoom in on my reference here. All right, and anybody in the chat that's watching, let me know if you have a favorite artist. I've got a lot of artists I like, but I don't really have a ton of time to just look at what they're doing or what they used to do when they were still alive. Always nice going to an opening. Oh, so what to paint first? Well, right now what I'm doing, I'm just looking at, oh, thanks. Feels like you made it my biggest fan. Thank you. So what I'm looking at right now, I'm just kind of like seeing what jumps out at me. There's a little kind of area right over here, almost like a little kind of mountain type of a shape. So in general, it's good to try to paint big to small. That's like the same case with drawing. You look for bigger things and just kind of do the biggest ones first and then go smaller and smaller as you go along. And that way you have a better chance of getting everything in the right place before you do the details and have to redo it and move things that you spent time on, which is not really fun. So this is kind of the next biggest shape that's in this area after the line I did in the beginning. Hi, Olga. Thanks for stopping by. And I feel like this is like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood or something. So, just painting a glacier scene. Olga Pankova is a lab event painter, does some really cool stuff, and we have both had plenty of experience with painting married couples. So this is a first for me. I've never actually painted a glacier before. So it's very monochrome. I mean, aside from the couple, even the sky is not that much different than what's happening underneath here with all the, you know, the actual land. So, Olga, do you have anything cool you're working on? New destinations you've been going to for different events? It's almost what looks like a little path right over here. Just kind of putting that in. I don't think anyone's actually been over there though. Looks like this is a place where there's not really a lot of people walking around. So now there's a lot of other stuff happening to the left where it's kind of a little more nondescript. So part of what's going on there is there's some of that sort of black sand that's happening from the mountains. I think right now I'm looking kind of through the black part and just to what's underneath there. So it's kind of going to be sort of like an area over here coming down, which is darker. Sometimes it can be a little disorienting when there's something, a really dark area, and then there's a color underneath there. And it may be more convenient to paint the darker part after the first part, but you know, the actual technical part of it may be easier, but sometimes seeing that can be a little bit kind of tricky. This is coming over this way here. I think the last time I went live, there actually were no technical problems. That was maybe the only one out of like 9 or 10. There was some weird little monkey wrench right at the beginning. Okay, so now this part down here is a little bit more whitish, so I'm gonna just leave that for now. I'm giving this a little texture just the way I'm painting it. I don't really need it to be totally flat and even because there's so much going on in this scene. There's another place right over here where there's sort of a stripe happening. It's a little bit thicker than a stripe, but I'm just scumbling this in here now, just basically scribbling with paint. You really need a firm brush to scumble. You just use a soft brush, it's going to flop all over and it's not really going to put the paint on the painting. So, still looking at this in terms of just trying to take this almost old TV static amount of detail and make some sort of sense of it. And it looks nice, but it's really, there's a lot of little things going on. So, over this way, there's also sort of a shape going over like that. And I almost just went over my little path there by accident, but there actually is a little spot right there. That's what you call a happy accident. And then there's a darker part right here. I'm going to get some of the darker blue, put that in down this way. In some of these places, when there's not really a lot of variation with the color, just a little dark area here and there can really help kind of give you a little more kind of help get you more oriented with where you're looking. It's easy with something like this to look back and forth and then put something in the wrong place. And now this path is kind of white, but the area next to it, I'm gonna get it a little bit later, but it's gonna be a little darker than white at least. The lead white I'm using is a little bit on the warm side, but I think that's okay. I think for when I do some other work on top of this, I may be using a lead titanium, which is going to be cooler. Having a slight amount of variation in the color like that, make it warmer in some places, that can actually help to diversify the palette, have it look a little bit more interesting. There's a little area right here. It's almost looks like a tiny mountain range. I don't think it really is, but just darker. So just gonna put that in there. The first painting I've done since I've been streaming, not screaming, where it's at the very beginning of the painting instead of the other ones I did. Most of them were, I guess maybe all of them, they were already started and I was kind of just finishing something I had been wanting to work on for a while. So this is seeing the complete opposite end of things, and this is going to be many hours to work on this painting, finish it. So it's got a long way to go before it's anywhere close to being done. cerulean is one of those colors that it's a cobalt color, but different version of cobalt than what you call cobalt blue. There's a lot of pigments that have multiple different actual colors that you can buy in a tube, depending on what they're combined with, whether it's copper or aluminum or whatever, different processes. Sometimes it's just different dirt that's dug up in different places, and the chemical compound is a little different. Even if it's the same as what's in the next tube over, there's different amounts, or it's formed in a different way so they don't look the same. It's pretty complex as far as how all the different colors end up looking the way they do. Now, there's a little place over here. Actually, her hair is going to be coming out a lot more than what I have right now. Actually, they're right around here, so it's one of those things where it looks like I put it over too far, but I think it's actually fine. So I'm going to just leave that. And there's actually a little dark area right here, sort of a line coming out. And sometimes I have to hold the side of the painting just because if I don't, the whole thing is just going to rock back and forth so much. Maybe this is a little lower. I could do some things with the mountains right now. I think I'm going to just keep going with this sort of ice field that's happening. That'd be a cool name for a band, Ice Field. I mean, there's a band called Sense Field I like from the old days, and then another one called Elysian Fields I like. Okay, so far it's still a little bit squiggly, but kind of coming together. There's a bunch of shadows in here. I'm going to just go in there and do. I'm going to start out with actually this darker area over here. Not extremely dark, but a lot more than the majority of what I've done over here so far. So that comes down and breaks up a little bit. And this really almost could be sort of an abstract painting on the sides at this point, if you didn't know what was going to be coming next. Things sort of start out abstract a lot of the time in the beginning, just in general, become more and more sort of in focus. Sometimes there can be some kind of cool juxtapositions with going loose and tight, which is very realistic or not quite so much. Schmelkeberry, I was wondering when you were going to get here. Thanks for coming. So I'm doing something a little different today from what you've seen before. This is very early on in this painting, and this couple went up here for this photo shoot in Alaska on a glacier. Well, it's okay. You're here. I'm not gonna give you detention or something. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, I'm doing a layout here. Sometimes when I'm laying things out, I'll just sort of do a contour drawing basically. Yeah, it is big. Or huge, if you wanted to call it that. I mean, I could lay on this thing if I wanted to, if I put it down flat. Yeah, I was saying before, this is actually 48 inches wide, so that's the biggest commission I've done. The only thing I ever did that was bigger than that, I guess, was when I was in art school. I did a painting that was 8 feet in one direction. I don't remember what the other dimension was, but that was extra big. But I think that was maybe the only thing I've done that was bigger than this. Aside from like some mural stuff that wasn't very good. I remember I did a mural when I was in like 7th grade with these two guys, and we kind of had to work on it after school. I came up with this thing. There was like some dragon, like a three-headed dragon that was attacking a castle, because I was really into dragons back then. And we had to work on it at different times. And I kept on telling, like, they kind of messed up the sky. And I was like, just don't worry about the sky. Just like work on this other part. It's like, it was too dark. It didn't look good. And like, next time I saw it, they just went over the sky again and it was still too dark. I was like, just don't worry about the sky. Just leave it. Do this other part. Or maybe I was telling them work on the lighter part of the sky. And then they worked on the same part again and it was still terrible. And it was so bad by the time it was done, I didn't even want to sign the thing because I didn't want anybody to know that I had anything to do with it. It looked terrible. But really, it was those two guys. It was their fault. I'll blame them because it was. Anyway, that was one thing I did that was bigger than this. Something that you have to really do, I mean, in general it's good, but like especially for something like this, you got to back away because it's so big. You definitely are not going to see it the same way up close. That can be kind of a trick that some artists really like Casey Baugh. If you ever look at his paintings, you know, there's one show he was doing years ago, and he still kind of paints this way. I was just talking to him about how he was doing the different things in the show, and you know, his goal was when you get close, he wanted it to all just fall apart, but then you back up, and then it looks just like a person at a counter or whatever it may be. So I think that kind of stuff is really cool, but in general, I always tend to go a little bit on the tighter side. Actually painting looser now than I used to. It was like really tight years ago. So Schmuckleberry, what are you up to tonight? Anything interesting? Just kind of, I gotta be careful to not have this whole thing just turn into a random mess, because there's so much going on here. And this is like a, I don't know, you could just take a bunch of flour with blue food coloring and throw it on a counter and it would probably look pretty similar. So part of sometimes painting is just extracting some sort of order, like actual form or shape from what's going on. And you know, the original, maybe a little bit more kind of chaotic. You know, I'm gonna just, looking at this little area right here, I'm gonna just go over this. And there's a little highlight hitting the right side here. And I'm gonna just get some white on the brush. I wanna make this lighter. There we go. Definitely once the whole thing starts getting covered more and more, subtle changes in the color becomes a lot more obvious. Sometimes things may look like they're almost the same color at one point, and then as you keep going, you can see how different they are much easier. And I just hand jived like I was juggling. So there's a lot of lighter blue over here. Just these very light colors that are pretty close to white. Hi Cody, thanks for stopping by. Just very early on with this painting here, laying things out. So I think I'm going to come down this way now, and just kind of slope happening over on the left. I'm going to just put this in here. I'm not going too thick with this layer. I mean, it's a little bit slightly on the thicker side in some places, but not really trying to go too thick, because in underpainting, you know, different parts are going to be painted over, and the thicker it is, the longer it takes to dry. But also sometimes you don't want it to be too thick, because then it'll show through more on the top layer. Of course, in this case, I think that would be a nice thing because there's so much texture going on that I would kind of like to see the texture showing through. So that's part of the reason I'm doing it also kind of thick. And I might really keep a bunch of this. I'm going to just see how it goes. It's just 3D things. Yeah, it's huge. I think the consensus is the painting is huge. Yeah, so definitely no sitting while working on this one. I mean, I'd have to lower it to the point where I can't even lower it to really do anything anyway. It's past the point on my easel. Well, I could bring the brace down below the place where there's a bolt, but for something this big, I would definitely not typically be sitting down unless I broke my ankle or something. Not that I've ever done that, so I can't really say for sure. Broke my arm once. I sprained it. Yeah, I sprained it. That also was not fun. So, just kind of blocking this in right now. So blocking in, if you don't know, is a term that just basically means, even though I'm giving it a little texture, just kind of like filling things in a really basic sort of way. Kind of get your shadows and your lights sort of separated. And just by doing that alone, even if you don't do much rendering, it can really make things look much more dimensional, and it's kind of a nice way to start certain things. So there's this place over here, which would be maybe a fun little spot to go down if you had a sled up in this place, and kind of going up more to the right of that. And kind of lightens up right at the top, right around here somewhere. Really going off the camera a lot, actually, now that I'm looking over there. But let me moving around for this one. I remember my brother and I back, I guess it was the blizzard of 93 or whatever that was, a really big one, where we had to shovel snow off of our roof here in New Jersey. There was no cars out, there was just snow everywhere on the road. We actually went to the top of the road that we lived next to that was on a hill and just went down the road on our sleds. And my brother went first, and he yelled really loud, and I thought he was just kind of playing it up because he's like, oh yeah, wow, I'm having so much fun, yay. But then I did it, and I yelled really loud too because I didn't realize how fast I was going to be going. But that was cool. There's people that were just going down the middle of the street in skis, just like cross-country skiing down our street. So I'm gonna, this is another case where I've got some of the really dark sort of sand coming off the mountain over here, and gotta sort of like look behind that. Oh, this is board. So I don't really work on canvas anymore. I used to many years ago, but the way I'm pressing on this would be a lot different if it was canvas. It'd be bouncing a lot more, and I definitely prefer board, but even if I didn't, board is much better over the long run. It's more archival, which means that the painting lasts for much longer. So it's definitely a really good idea to paint on a rigid support like this. If you do nothing else, that's the #1 thing you can do to make your paintings last. Yeah, it's like, basically it's masonite. I used to paint on masonite, which is just hardboard. It's like Kleenex. It's, you know, brand name of hardboard, not cardboard. I wouldn't paint on that. But if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you can get masonite and you can paint on that. But if you're gonna do that, you wanna be careful, because when you gesso it, you wanna make sure that the edge is sanded down really smooth. Otherwise, when you gesso it, you're gonna get these really sharp spikes and it can chip and break off. which I had happen with a couple things many years ago, and I was like, yeah, maybe I won't do that anymore. So, I mean, if you sand it down, it's much better. It's probably not as much of an issue, but I'm not sure about like sealing. If you get masonite that's not really meant for painting on, I'm not sure if you're maybe supposed to seal it so that there's not this like seeping through of the kind of brown color that's in there into the paint. I've never noticed anything like that with anything I did though. So anyway, this board is like a artist grade masonite basically. It's a little thinner than usually what you get at the store like that. So it makes it much lighter. It's still really heavy when you pick it up. I mean, this thing, I don't even know how much it cost or how much it weighs. When I ordered it, I had a special order this size. The box, like, I don't even remember how much the box weighed because it was this board, and then they actually put a piece of board on each side of it that's the same size to protect it during the shipping. And so that board took some effort to move. Or, well, the box, I mean, really. So I'm gonna just, you know what? So before I fill in any more, I'm gonna just draw out kind of where I think this needs to end up. And this is definitely something to do from further back over here. I'm looking at where the edge of this mountain is right over here, and if I come down, sort of right around here, there's this little kind of mini crevasse happening. Let me just go to the darker blue actually. Crevasse. It's a fun word, crevasse. So it's just coming down and goes out a little bit more, maybe right over here. It looks a little bit like a duck head with its bill sticking out. And right over here, there's kind of a shadow that's coming off of that. Okay. So I'm going to make a line right over here just to kind of hint at this other sort of dark area that's coming around. And it sort of connects pretty close this way. I mean, I guess it doesn't actually connect, but it's right over here and goes down towards the bottom for that area. But definitely maybe painting over a lot of this, but right now I'm just kind of putting in the values and the shapes that are happening. Just by doing that, get me pretty close to what I actually need, and then I can fine tune that. Oh, gesso is, so real gesso is actually made of gypsum. It's not something that people use very much anymore, but what everyone calls gesso is actually just usually white acrylic. It's like not the same as what you paint with, but it's a very kind of matte version of a white acrylic paint. And so you put that down before you do any other painting like this. So this is all the white part that you see here, that's what that is. And you don't really want to paint on a surface without some kind of white ground like that. Usually, number one, the white shows through and it makes the color brighter that you're painting over top of it, but also kind of maybe important just as far as just the painting being stable. And there's cases where you do need to seal it depending on what you're working on. There's different things you can use for that, but in general, most people are going to be painting on some kind of a white gesso type thing. You can get oil-based ground. You can get things that are oil primed, or you know, acrylic gesso could be used for oil or acrylic. Even though it's acrylic, you can paint over it with the oils, and that's okay. But you wouldn't want to use oils and then go over that with acrylic later on. That would definitely cause some problems. So I actually, some stuff I've been painting with, been trying out lately that is not acrylic gesso. I've been doing that because acrylic gesso is very absorbent. I try to get things that are less absorbent if I can. Just leads to less sinking later on with the paint that you put over top of it. So that's in general helpful. You can also gesso things yourself, but unless you want a specific type of texture, it's probably not really necessary in most cases. Just kind of like extra work and doesn't necessarily save you a lot of money. It might save a little, but depending on what you buy, you know, there's some really cheap canvas out there. I mean, I've had some students that had canvas that was like literally $4, like a stretched canvas that was like this big, or maybe even like that. And I don't even know how any company is making any money on that at all, but it's definitely not good quality. So if you actually care about whatever you're going to work on, I would get something else. Yeah, sure. There's really a lot of detail happening down here, so I'm trying not to get too caught up in that. At the same time, if I give it some kind of texture, you know, it's going to be more similar to what's actually going on there. So really covering things pretty much as I can, aside from anything that's just white. It's not as big of an issue. It already looks the way it's going to be when it's done. But I am going to be painting over anything that's just any gesso. I don't really leave it white, even if it's just going to be white later when I paint over it. I'm looking at kind of a bigger shape happening right here. It's kind of coming across, and then there's also this right here that comes down, making kind of a noticeable shadow. There's another place up here, which is pretty cool looking. It's a little kind of V-shaped shadow happening. This is a really interesting landscape because there's so much blue in it from all the ice, but a lot of the time when you're painting blue in landscapes, it's because there's a reflection of the sky hitting something in the shadow area. There's all this blue sky that's always up there, which I was talking about with the boulder I was painting a little while ago. There's that blue that's kind of showing up in places where the sun's not hitting it too bright. But in this case, you have all this blue, and that may be a little bit of what you're seeing. But it's the ice itself is blue. Well, I'm definitely planning to finish it before Christmas, but I've been wrong before about how long it takes me to finish paintings. Just finished one that took me 6 months not too long ago. That was a really long time. Okay, so now, this little shadow right here, I think needs to come over more to the left. See, I've got a certain amount of space here. I'm like rationing it out with all these different things that are happening. And if I get it too far over in one spot, everything gets squished next to that. So this right here. You mean how long did the last one take? In hours? The last one was, well, the last one meaning the one I was just talking about that I spent 6 months on, or do you mean like the last painting I just finished last week? There's a bunch of different last ones. Okay. Well, that one was the Gapstow Bridge painting. I'm not sure, but maybe around 10 or 12 hours, I think. I started it a long time ago, so kind of just guessing about that plus the new time I'd spent on it. Oh yeah, you're gonna watch every week? Well, I'm glad you're excited. I'm doing a lot of brain stuff right now, so sometimes it's hard to actually sound like a normal human when you're talking in like only so much brain available at any moment to make words while I'm just making these blobs on here. Yeah, you know what? I would get bored working on it that long too. I'm like 100 hours. That's like I'm ready to be done at that point, if not sooner. So, 650. You do the math. Yeah, that one went very, very far past what I thought it was going to be. And there's usually like some of that going on, but this was like a situation. It wasn't just, no, I was 20 or 30 hours off. This was like kind of monumentally not the same as what I thought it was going to be. Actually, yeah, not too far off. I mean, I was paid a decent amount of money for the job, but that was a commission also. But in the end, for how much time I spent on it, it didn't really work out that well. So, not the client's fault. I gave him the price, but that's one of the kind of tricky things about sometimes estimating a price for a painting for a commission like that and then doing the work, is you don't really know what it's going to be like. Oh, wait a minute. Was that 100? No, 10,000. Yeah, no, it was right around there, but it was, I think it came out to like maybe $10 an hour or maybe 11. So that was a little rough to see that. So I figured it out at the end. I did a painting for the same couple actually, and that one went extra fast. So that kind of helped kind of even things out a little bit. So that, makes it a little bit better. But when you're kind of pricing a painting for somebody, it's kind of like looking into this many years ago, like, well, how do I do this? I mean, if you just tell them it's going to be an hourly rate, they're not there watching you paint. Like, how do they know how much time you're actually spending on it? And then, if it comes out to be way more than they can afford, then they might just be like, oh, I can't pay that. So I kind of looked at it like, well, I basically need to give them a price and say, all right, this is how much it'll be. But it's always kind of an estimation as far as how much time you're really going to need. Oh, okay, got paint on my glove here. Gotta clean that. But, I don't really know of a really better way to do it than just giving them a price ahead of time. Unless you get to the point where you're so famous that really your clients are gonna just pay whatever you want. There are people that have enough that it's not an issue. You're in a different kind of world at that point anyway. But definitely a risk for commissions, especially if you don't know what the image is going to look like ahead of time. So like that one that took so long, I didn't have the reference in the beginning when I gave the price. I'm gonna wipe off my hand. Well, my glove anyway. So it's definitely nice working from actual people, you know, from an actual model. It's just different. Aside from just, I don't know, various other reasons why you might like it more, it just always seems to go faster. I mean, I haven't really painted from a live model for a while, but it's just, it's like the difference between, I don't know, it's like it's a copy of a copy when you're using a photo. So I definitely know people that use photos and make great paintings, and I've painted from photos plenty of times, but painting from an actual person is just really, it's just completely different. Get some more of this paint off my glove here. All right, I think I got it all, or most of it. Yeah, so anyway, like when you're painting from a photo, I mean, that one that took so long, you know, one of the things that did not help speed things up at all was there was cases where, you know, I had multiple photos I was working from, and this is too wide right here. I gotta fix that. This part has to come over. So there's cases where, like with that one, where I was looking at a photo and, you know, you take the same, like take a picture of the same thing in different places or from different angles, and even in the same setting, the colors can change a lot. And so I was like looking at certain things while I was working on that painting, and I just like literally was not sure what color it was supposed to be. You know, one, like the guy's feet I was painting for an Indian wedding, and in one picture they look a little bit more kind of like almost violet, and then another one they look kind of more less color, maybe more pinkish or whatever it was. So, you know, that alone is just like makes it a little more difficult when you can't even tell what you're supposed to be doing, let alone, you know, painting the thing. You know what, this kind of darker crevasse over here, I'm going to bring that more to the right. I think that's actually throwing off this whole thing. I mean, not like anybody would know except for you guys, but it's too far over. So I'm going to move this, make it thicker, and bring this over. And I'm going to have to move over a couple other things there. Oh yeah, and forget if you had talked about what you were streaming before. What was that? Like art stuff? Okay. Well, no time like the present. Maybe it could be a way to get you back into painting. I think you said you took a break from painting, right? You want to get back into it? You know, if you have, you know, if you tell people you're going to be streaming, then maybe a way to kind of motivate you to do it each week. Kind of like sometimes a lot of people have a hard time starting when they want to paint or draw or something, and it's just sometimes some pressure to like make sure you do a good job or whatever. But it can kind of be like working out, I think, where if you have somebody to work out with, then you can't just go like, I don't feel like it today. You know, if you got somebody that's going to be waiting for you, or you're jogging or whatever, an accountability partner, as you might call it, then that can be a way to just get you to do the thing that you want to do, but sometimes you just don't always feel up to it, or I'm not sure if you're gonna do a good job or something. A lot of the times, the most important thing is just do it. Just do something. Even if you do try it and it doesn't come out as good as you want, you know, keep going and it'll get better. But I understand that sometimes feeling kind of hesitant to get to work on something. I mean, back when I got out of art school, I really had to like psych myself up to work on a painting. Like I'd sit down there and be like, you know, I'd like really get my mind ready for it. And like I knew how to paint at that point. It wasn't like it was a new thing even, but that definitely can happen where it's just kind of takes kind of a lot of sort of willpower to get to it. So this is getting better over here. Let me just use my brush to sort of scrape this off. Not really working that great. I have to wipe it on the palette here. Okay, there it goes. So because this brush is pretty firm, I can do this. And I'm going to just add a little more dark over here now. Since I moved that part over, I have a little more room to adjust this. And, oh, you know what? Got to take some more out down this way. So it's kind of becoming more clear here. As I'm getting more specific with the different things I'm working on. It's like I can see where I need to just adjust this little part right here that I didn't notice before. Okay. Now, one of the things that might be a little bit tricky with this is there's a kind of a wall right here, and then it just is all level past that. And there doesn't really look like there's that much of a difference from this part to that part. So I have to be careful with that while I'm going along doing this. I'm gonna go in here with some of these darker parts. This is one section here. I'm gonna kind of use the dark blue as a sort of stand-in for the places where there's gonna be some of that sort of black sand from the mountains. I think that's fine. This is really sort of an underpainting, just monotone underpainting anyway. Even if it's not that far off from how it's going to be when it's finished. So, a few of these little kind of stripes happening here. Well, whatever works for you, schmuckles. You want to get back into painting. You could kind of play a weird mind game where even if no one's watching, just pretend like you're going to just make something awful. So that way there's no expectations if it doesn't come out good. And then you'll probably be happily surprised that it's actually pretty good. Okay, so I think this is getting to a point over here where I've got a lot of it in there. So, well, I definitely would not call myself a master. There's some things I have to still work on before I get to that point. I feel like somebody to be a master, I don't know. A few more things I think that kind of need to fall into place for me. What is that? Banned? You afraid of getting banned now? Okay. You know, I think I'm going to do a little bit more over here because this is a little bit extra white right now. And want to keep it pretty light, but I'm going to add some kind of general sort of texture in there. Just kind of wiping off some of this darker blue. It's not that dark, but darker than what I need. So for this area, kind of giving it a little bit more of a detailed sort of kind of texture in there because I've already got it kind of laid out. So this is part of the whole working big to small thing. Once you have the big part in there, then you can kind of start doing the smaller parts. Because you know that they're, well, you don't really know. Sometimes you think that you don't know. But you probably have a good idea it's in the right spot. If you're really looking around and checking the right areas, and then it's not as much of a risk to do the detail and kind of start doing that stuff next. Okay. .420 couple. What's that? You announcing yourself? Yeah, I was thinking that emoji is a little creepy also. You're the one that put it there. Who is that? Makes me think of like a young Michael Myers or something. And you know, Michael Myers from Halloween. When they made that movie originally, actually, stop me if you know this trivia bit, but they actually got a mask of a certain person and just painted it white. This is a person that was famous in the early 80s, late 70s, whenever the first one was made. So they just used that mask and painted it white, and it was super creepy. Still is. Kind of funny when you know who it is, though. I'm putting in some of this darker stuff on the bottom left here. Pretty dark. Not as dark as that emoji, but dark. Anybody else? Yes, Live Like You Mean It was William Shatner. Which, if you didn't know that, you know, just seeing Mike Myers, you know, whatever, Michael Myers in the movies, Really, you don't get that from the mask at all, but if you know who it is and you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, I can see that. Looking at this little lump right over here, you know, it's kind of... I guess I need to just kind of isolate this one little shape down this way. Definitely it is nice when you're painting things this organic. Really, you can do things that are pretty far off from the reference and it still potentially may look all right, as long as you don't get too crazy. But much different than painting a person's face or something like that. You can't really change things too much without really being intentional about it, with something like that. Oh, great butt emoji. I'm not really sure what that means. All right, so give this a little bit more dark right here. At this point, it's kind of looking like I can definitely do that. Going a little too high with that one line right there. And just kind of wipe off the paint that's on the brush by just using it on other places and then come back to get rid of that top part. A little bit too high. This is something I do all the time. Just instead of wiping off the brush and just getting a different color on there, you kind of oftentimes just use the paint or put it on the palette in a different spot, and then use it later on. Just kind of saves time. Okay, that's better. That's more like what I want. So over here, there's kind of this little subtle shadow. So I'm definitely getting really a lot more detailed now. So I don't know if I want to keep going in a different spot or not. Oh, hi Marvel 87. I am gonna read that later because that's pretty long. So some of the stuff I did in the beginning here, I think I can go back up in there and maybe add a little bit more kind of texture. So something that's going on is you got, even though there's a lot of texture right here, there's all that stuff that's going on up above there, which has kind of a similar amount of texture, but it's further away. So to make it have the appearance of kind of going further away, you want to have smaller shapes going on in there in general. If it all look the same, then it doesn't really help with that, the perspective. So I am gonna kind of pay extra attention to giving this some like little stuff going on. Hey Lena. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was really happy when I got, talked to the client, and she was really nice on the phone and everything, but then she sent the picture and I was like really looking forward to painting this because it's just really like, it looks like it could easily be in a magazine. It would be like an editorial shoot or something. Get some more white. Any fun things happened with the dogs today? Out of the ordinary? Okay, I'm gonna get a slightly darker than white blue over here. This is one of those things in the palette, it might not really stand out that much, but with all the stuff that's going on right there, it gets more obvious. And you throw it in there in a big kind of field of all this other stuff happening. And not really a ton of order I can give what I'm working on right now. It's just there's a lot going on. So even as light as that was, I mean, I guess the paint's mixing on the brush with what I am getting over here from the new paint I just mixed, but already a little bit darker than maybe I need. This is like painting clouds. Now that I think of it, you have to be really careful painting clouds because the shadows are, it's super easy to make the shadows darker than you want them. Just you add the tiniest bit of black in there and make a gray for the shadow areas. And like, even when I'm careful about it all the time, it's like too dark. I have to kind of go back the other way. Schmuckleberry number 2. Winning the party. Okay. Oh. Okay, so I just noticed actually I'm looking the wrong spot over here. Sometimes when I'm working from photo reference, I'll just like try to get it to be what you call sight size, which is when it's the exact same size as you're seeing it to your painting. And that's really a great way to work a lot of the time. But then other times I just need to zoom in a little more to see what's going on, or I need to zoom out just to see like how far out is one thing compared to another. Especially like right now, because I've got all this stuff all over on my screen while I'm streaming. So I can't really have the whole screen being taken up by the reference. And you know what? There's a little area right over here. I think I kind of did something with that before, but I'm going to do some lighter area right in this part, and then I'm going to just add in a little bit more dark because kind of seeing something that's sort of standing out right there that I can do. I'm going to kind of keep bringing this down a little bit darker also. One thing you have to really be careful with when you're painting this kind of stuff too is if the photo is going off the edge of the screen, you may think that the picture actually ends here and then paint it that way, and then you zoom out and you see, oh, there's a whole mountain you missed, you know. That's no fun. And actually, I think I want to bring this over some more. So that part I just did, I'll just get rid of it. All right, I'm gonna just back up for this a little more. I really don't need to be that close for it, so. Triangle, this part, or the mountain? The mountain actually looks very much like a, not sure if this is what you mean, there's like a triangle stencil you can get for art stuff. Actually almost the same size even. Guess the kids aren't using those as much these days with their fangled iPads. A little bit darker right here. Okay, so I'm at the base of the mountain right over this way, and there's this couple kind of like darker lines right here. Something like this. When you do have so many things happening in a scene like this, then whatever places there are, things that are kind of noticeable really stand out. And things that might normally not be that interesting, they kind of be like, they become, I don't know, more interesting. Oh, pretty much everything I do is freehand. I don't really, I'll kind of measure things out. Like when I first started this, there was a few key places that I really measured extremely carefully. And then I just kind of like drew everything in after that, like where the edge of the land is over here, or the mountain, the tops or whatever, like, you know, that kind of stuff. Just having a few little kind of points drawn in, like little dots, that can really help you avoid having to redo some stuff that you don't want to change, like, you know, putting something in there and then realizing it's wrong and going back to fix it. You know, if you can just make a few little marks like that, that can be really useful just to get things in the right place, and then you don't have to redo it. I'm not big on redoing things, in case you haven't guessed by now. But if it's wrong and you need to redo it, you gotta just do it. That didn't get much lighter just now. I have to just wipe this down here. Okay. So I'm thinking maybe, oh wow, I've been doing this for an hour and a half already. That looks like, I don't know, Jupiter or something with all the stuff that's going on. There's this kind of darker area right here. I think I want to maybe go in there and kind of just bring that down in value some more. Kind of making like a Z shape right there. I feel like tracing, there can be things you can kind of get out of tracing sometimes, but it's a different kind of approach, and you'll get better as an artist if you're not relying on that so much. Also helps you get faster if you're just doing things without tracing, and kind of just strengthening your brain enough that you can get things much quicker. I mean, I definitely noticed, like when I was in art school, like we drew from the figure so much, and I got like really fast at just getting things right away. And you know, if you just really do it regularly, or you know, whatever you're drawing or painting, it's like anything else, you just do it a lot and you're gonna get much better at it. Oh, you know what? I just put this line in here and I just realized it's actually that line that I already did. So that's like I was saying before, it's so easy to just kind of do things. Well, there is sort of a thing there that kind of looks like that. I'm gonna go over it just a little bit. I'm not gonna get rid of it altogether, but it's kind of just not as noticeable right there. Yeah, I guess that's fine. So, yeah. You can trace if you want, but kind of a crutch. I'm gonna put this down here, even though the hair is gonna be going over it. Maybe just flapping in the wind. Gravity Falls. Thanks for stopping by. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I like to do something when I'm drawing called plotting points. So it's kind of like that, where you just, instead of actually drawing in the beginning, you just kind of make a mark here and there, maybe 4 or 5 marks on something, maybe like the highest point and the furthest to the right and whatever, things like that. I just said furthest to the right and I use my left hand, but you know what I mean. So I really like doing that a lot of the time, even if it's just like a very initial thing, like the first, 20 seconds or whatever. You can kind of look at it and imagine, if you connected all of them, does the shape look like it's, too narrow compared to your subject or whatever? So, have you been doing anything fun lately? Any art stuff? Kind of liking how this right here looks. It's one of the only things in this big mess that actually looks kind of dimensional. And this is one of those cases where a lot of people right now might be like, what am I doing? I mean, not that I'm not saying that, but a lot of people might just be thinking maybe they need to start over or something. Yeah. Really, whatever works for you. Like I do things that plenty of other people might not really want to use while they're painting, or they just are not into that way of working. And there's things that other people do that don't really work for me so much. Like the whole way of drawing people by, like, if you're drawing a full person, like making like cylinders and spheres and different things for the elbow and that kind of stuff, like that works really well for some people. That never really was my thing. So I think if it's useful, might as well use it, but if it's not your kind of way of working, that's okay. So how long things take to dry really depends on the pigment. Like the lead white I'm using is a very fast drying color. That'll dry like overnight. I mean, not 100%, but basically dry enough that it feels dry. That's true for any paint, any oil paint. But then this other color I'm using, the blue, cerulean, that will take maybe like a couple days or maybe even 3, depending on how thick it is. It's all kinds of factors. I mean, for sure, things dry faster in the summertime than they do in the winter. I've heard people say that that's not true, but I'm going to tell you it's definitely true. And the molecules move faster in the summertime. Like if you think about how like a bee is, when it gets colder, they don't move as fast. Things are kind of slowing down with probably their metabolism and just in general. But when it's like a really hot day, then the ants and bugs and everything, they're just like going really fast. So that kind of, I feel like, is like maybe a weird analogy to use in this situation, but like how the molecules, like they move really fast and eventually, I think, I'm not sure if there's a whole thing with like ice turning into water or whatever, vapor, and then molecules speeding up or whatever. I know they're looser, but anyway, the way that oil paint dries is by oxidization. Little oxygen molecules are combining with the paint. And so if the colder sort of time of the year makes things kind of, I guess we could say, closer to being ice and solid instead of, liquid or gas or whatever, that seems to have something to do with it. I could be wrong about that, but definitely it dries faster in the summer. That was a really weird answer to a simple question for how long does paint take to dry, but anyway, there's other things that go into it also, with how much oil you're adding and, I guess the humidity, but temperature seems to be a bigger factor than that for me. You can also add things to the paint to make it dry faster if you want, which I used to use liquid, which makes things dry overnight, but it stinks. Like, it smells really bad. Or you may want things to dry slower, and you can add oil or different, well, basically oil. You can add oil to it to slow it down. And I mean, if you're using poppy oil, which is a very slow oil, you could maybe even have as long as like a week or more to work on something. I mean, if you're using dioxazine by itself, that's about the slowest color I know of drying. Like I've had times where that, I think even took like 2 weeks to dry. We painted a little bit on the thicker side. So you may like that, or that may be a really annoying pain in the butt for you. Depends on your style and what you're working on. Because there's times where I want things to dry fast, and there's other times where I don't. So, you know, really, that can change even just with one person for what you really want at the moment. Oh. Oh, cool. Resin flower jewelry. That's nice. Are you making these things and you're gonna like bring them to like a craft market or anything like that, or just for fun for yourself? Just wear them yourself, no one else gets them. I had used Sculpey for some things a long time ago. I guess that's not a resin, but you know, you can do some fun things with that. There's some glow-in-the-dark Sculpey, which I really liked. Actually still have one that I never used that's just up next to my light near the ceiling. It's just still in the container or whatever the package. You know, I think I'm at a point now where I can just look at this and figure out what I'm doing next. Actually, okay, so this right here, I'm gonna just combine these two parts so that they're connected more. I'm just noticing this is a little wide right here, actually. There's some funky going on there. I don't really see anything standing out that looks off individually, but a little weird. I guess maybe I'm gonna bring this down. Sometimes it's just little changes here and there that and I can fix something that's going on. And this is kind of coming down lower here also. So it's kind of like, if you ever look at a map, just like the way that, say like the states have all these squiggly lines on the edges, but you can still recognize them as the individual states. Or I mean, at least the ones that are, you know, that you know. They're sort of just these amoeba shapes, but they still have something going on that you can recognize. So sometimes it's like that, with just kind of finding things and really looking at what the shape of something is that you need. Just moving something over or making it bigger or whatever. Gravity Falls, I'm going a little bit, I started a little bit later today. Are you usually on around this time? Just wondering, I'm still kind of like finding the best time to stream. Still experimenting. Add a bunch over here. This is really, I'm continuing in that spot on the reference. Still not sure what's wrong right here. I guess it's not too far off. You know what? Maybe this, I've got this part right here. I can just kind of bring that over more. I think that might be it. And just turn the angle of this one part. Actually, maybe this does need to come over. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm looking at it and not really sure what I need to change here. I mean, it's pretty much where it needs to be, but not quite. So, something going on. I'm gonna actually just draw in, when I say draw, but I'm using paint. Do this little part right over here. This kind of takes a turn. It's a little extra dark. I kind of feel like this is almost like there's this one episode of X-Files where Scully and Mulder are looking at all these papers. There's like a whole bunch of papers on the floor, and they're just like trying to sort what's going on with them. They're all zeros and ones, but then one of them goes up on the stairs and sees it's a woman's face, you know, from far away. So, I mean, there's not really any kind of order like that here, but there is sort of recognizable shapes happening and things that not totally random. There are certain things happening in there that you can kind of pick out. It's nice that it's a fun daughter activity at first. Well, that's always a good sign. If you already sold what you've made, that's a good sign that you're doing something right. I mean, it's kind of rough if you make something like that and you try to sell it. It doesn't really happen. Sometimes it just means you're not in the right place, you're not in front of the right people, but a lot of people get into things sort of by accident, like they just do something for fun and then someone's like, I want that, and then they make another one and someone else is like, I want that, and then it turn into a business. So that's cool. Do you do like different types of flowers? Okay. I imagine there's so many different kinds of flowers out there. You could really keep going for a while there, just making new things you haven't done before, just to try them out, and that can be kind of cool. I like flowers. I've gotten, well, a couple places here and there I work just helping people out with making flower arrangements or whatever. When I was making signs in a grocery store, I kind of go over and help out with the floral department sometimes on a holiday, like Valentine's Day or something like that. And kind of started recognizing flowers more over the years and just kind of being able to tell what something is. I always liked gardening. I don't really have enough time to do very much of it now, but I like plants. I think it's really interesting just how diverse so many different kind of species are, and really they're just kind of growing the way they are because they evolved trying to survive, and the way things all work together with, you know, plants like flowers smell nice because the bees like it. Of course we smell it and we go, wow, that's nice, let's make a perfume out of it or whatever, or just sniff it because we like it. But it's cool how things like that work out in a way that by necessity things become beautiful over time. And looking at animal prints, and you know, cheetahs look the way they do because it's camouflage, and lots of other things are that way, or moths that have different patterns to kind of look like owl eyes, or you know, things like that. Yeah, I imagine mixing the colors together for those flowers. It's kind of like sometimes when you're mixing paint, you don't always get what you expect. Sometimes things don't really work, but other times you get something that's actually really interesting looking, and maybe it's kind of not what you were planning for, but you like it anyway. All those happy accidents. So Nice that you're enjoying yourself with that. All right. And looking for, I'm scouting around now. Okay, so there's an edge right over here where it's pretty dark. And kind of right above this sort of ridge happening, and it's connecting actually this whole thing right here, which I didn't really notice before, but now I can see it's kind of going from this side all the way over here. I'm not really sure what this white spot is now. I guess, okay, I think I know what that is. All right, so kind of goes above this part here. That's a little bit too much, but whatever. I think I might have overdone it a little bit with that. It's looking a little heavy-handed. So I'm gonna just go back and bring it the other way. This is definitely too much here. This is like, what was I doing? Okay, so I need to make this sort of edge of the ridge right here, or whatever you want to call that. I want it to be outlined enough, but if you overdo it, it just looks like you're trying too hard and doesn't really doesn't look natural. Oh, well, yeah, there's a whole thing with, do you know about the Fibonacci sequence? It's pretty interesting. I guess there are a lot of five petal flowered, but that doesn't make sense either. There's a lot of flowers with 5 petals, but you know, the plants tend to grow in a certain way, and as they multiply, like a lot of them will go around in spirals. You really see this with sunflowers, just the way that they kind of go out from the center with all the seeds in there. I think it was the movie Pi. There was a lot about the Fibonacci sequence. One of Christopher Nolan's early works. Was that? Oh no, that was Memento I'm thinking of. But that's kind of the end of that thought. I said, but as if there was something more. There's nothing left in my brain. I think I want to get some white over here. Let me just bring this back up. Maybe I'll come over here. That's not too bad. And there's this little chunk that comes down right here. Right over this way, somewhere. Speaking of chunk, who's excited for the next Goonies sequel? I mean, I guess the only sequel since there was no other ones. Been hearing about it for years, but apparently it's finally coming out. I think this maybe comes over a little more, actually. That's good, hanging out in nature. That's always nice, even if you're not learning anything. I like to go hiking. I haven't really gone for a while. Ryan Lang. Oh wow, I didn't see your comment for a little while. But yes, I used to watch X-Files. well, I don't remember for how long. I guess until I went to art school, right around 93, I guess it started or something. And then apparently they got a different guy after Mulder left. David Duchovny was no longer on the show and they had a different guy, but didn't really work so good and the show ended after that. But yeah, I was really into a lot of that kind of stuff back then. The unknown. So Brian, have you been painting anything? Any folks that might have appeared on an X-Files episode? This right here can get darker. Oh, I didn't know that the T1000 was the new fill-in. Interesting. Not sure if we've talked about this, but I saw somewhere on a behind-the-scenes special he was talking about as the T1000. Richard Patrick used sharks as his motivation. Like when he was moving around, he just basically like moved like a shark, or the way he was looking at things. But yeah, kind of hard to picture anybody kind of taking over aside from David Duchovny that would really work. I don't know what he's been up to lately. I guess he was on that Californication for a while. I never saw it. Okay, so looking at places that are white now, and over here, it's not really quite that bright. Robert. What about Richard? I think I'm going to make some of this area here a little darker. Just looking at how white the dress is, this definitely is not as white as that, so I'm kind of bring it darker. Yeah, kitties in paint. You don't want to come home and find little blue and red paw prints on the walls. So Gravity Falls, you're talking about my painting? I'll just move my picture here a little bit. So it's definitely getting to the point I was talking about before, where now there's a bunch of things in there and it's easier to see really where the values are kind of more subtly, you know, nuanced, to use a kind of fancy word. So not quite as light as what I have in some places, or Maybe some places are a little too dark and I need to lighten them. So, I think I might leave this area right here as being kind of white. Oh, the new Goonies movie. Yeah. There's some cool tie-ins on Stranger Things with what's his name? That was in Goonies. A couple little references here and there. Maybe what's his name? I don't know if they had the movie kind of like finished for a little while or something and they were just waiting on it, because the kid that was in Goonies, that was also in one of the Indiana Jones movies, you know, as an adult now, no longer a kid. He just got, like, I think got an Oscar last year for whatever movie it was. I didn't see it, but that's nice. So definitely one of those situations where that could really get people ready to watch a new Goonies movie. I just kind of soften the edge on some of these parts right over here. Maybe I need to add some more dark. Are you talking about the Indiana Jones movie? Yeah, I guess maybe that was right after Goonies. I don't remember which one that was. And so now there's a new Indiana Jones too. Everything is coming back. It's just like the same thing that we had 40 years ago. It's just going to be everything happening again. Everything happening all at once again for the second time. Okay. Over here can get darker. It was interesting to look back at certain time period and see there's like one actor was big for 2 or 3 years. He was in a bunch of movies and then kind of disappeared after that. Or you see somebody that you know now that you didn't know then, but he was like a waiter in a movie or something. Yeah. Remakes and reboots are, well, they've been big. As I was just talking with Brian Lang recently, they've been big since Batman Begins was such a huge hit. And that's where it all apparently started from. A built-in audience, so it's almost like the advertising is done for them already. Okay. I think I'm just, well, I'm gonna say I'm spending too much time in this corner, but I'm actually gonna do some of the slightly lighter things going on up here. I'm gonna try to keep this a little bit more kind of, I don't know, quick. There definitely are a lot of lazy writers in Hollywood, though. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. What was the movie? Now I can't remember the name. The Dead Don't Die. Oof. That had such potential to be good, but just the script. It was just so lazy. It wasn't even like somebody, I don't know the guy that wrote it, but it wasn't even like he wrote it and he thought it was going to be really good, and then it didn't really work out. It was just incredibly lazy. There were so many people in that movie that could have made it great. All right, so I'm keeping an eye on the edge of the whole image over here as far as where things need to go. And any other little places that stand out for like landmarks. Like this one spot right here looking too big, so I'm gonna kind of break it up with this right here. All right, I think I like that better. This little horn thing right here, I guess that's all right. I'm just gonna make it more narrow, or yeah. All right. Oh, thanks. Gravity Falls. Yeah, sometimes it takes a while till it starts looking like anything. But yeah, it's kind of coming together. I guess this edge here is sort of standing out enough to look like there's sort of that wall going on. I mean, that's definitely something I have to really be careful about with this, that it kind of has that same look, because the light is not even really different here than it is on the top. It's just all over the place. This is actually kind of a tricky thing to paint now that I'm really thinking about it. Just because of that, trying to keep it from having that sort of flat look. But I guess the individual places, like right up here, you know, and having kind of like a darker shadow on the right, or sorry, on the left, and then a lighter area on the right side, you know, that'll help to kind of bring things together, even if it altogether doesn't have that look of exactly what's going on. Another reason I was thinking about using the titanium white, it's titanium lead, specifically just going back over some of this is going to need something that's a little more opaque. So lead white on its own is a little more transparent. But like going over anything like this right here, you know, having a titanium in there is going to really help. So, I feel like I need to straighten up this whole area right here a little bit. I want to be careful not to make it too kind of heavy-handed like before. Sometimes you can kind of get into like almost like a trance doing this stuff. Just like you start to disappear and there's nothing there anymore but the brush just moving on its own. It's definitely nice when time goes by quickly and you get into the flow of it. That doesn't always happen. In fact, there's lots of times I've painted things that didn't happen, but it's nice when it does. And that's just like kind of a sign in general, whatever you're doing, that you're probably doing something right. Just noticing there's a little area right here also. There's kind of some light hitting some, like a little hill on the right side. I'm thinking that this actually needs to go down a little bit first. Yeah. I'm definitely losing track of time. I feel like when that happens, you're probably experiencing life a lot more the way an animal does. And like when you see a deer that's just like out grazing in a field, and the deer's not thinking, oh boy, I gotta finish grazing so later on I can go pick up the kids for soccer practice, and then I gotta make sure I go to the grocery store, and then I gotta do the laundry, and I gotta make sure I get new detergent, we're almost out. You know, like, they're just kind of in the moment a lot more than we are, probably. Like when our intellect advanced, it brought along some negatives with all the other kind of power that came with it. Is intellect the right word for that? I guess so. And we're also not going through our days just running from predators. Well, maybe in some cases we are, but they're just other humans that are trying to like steal from us or take advantage of us or something. But yeah, I feel like a lot of animals, they really got that whole thing. Like definitely cats. Cats just lay around. They're just like in the moment, attacking other cats, playing with a mouse toy. They're just doing their thing. I haven't gotten any cat fur in my paint yet today, but it's only 10 o'clock. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. Well, planning to stop around this time, but I don't know. Yes, living the life. do you guys think? Should I keep streaming some more? I mean, I could work on this thing regardless, but I could keep going and just keep on streaming while I'm painting. Yeah, some cats are bums. I mean, really, most of them don't do anything. They just lay there, and they might destroy something every once in a while, and they're like, yeah, did my job for the day, and then they go and lay down and sleep for another 50 hours. Okay. I'll keep streaming here. So, actually, I'm going to just reduce the white on the top of this area here. So this is a case of, like, as it's getting further along here, like, the more I'm painting this, the less white space there is. So the more it kind of becomes more precious. And then it's just kind of look more like this rare area that the light is hitting different parts that you're not getting as much. And so I need to just keep on trucking and doing that, because on top of the fact that it's not quite white enough, or well, it's too white for what I actually need for the painting. Yeah, like shadow, there's like definitely places where there's shadows, but I also want the bride here, she's wearing a white dress, so I want her to stand out more than all the other stuff that's going on. You know, you've got the groom next to her, but he's wearing sort of like a mauve color, so obviously that's not anything, there's nothing else in the image that looks like that. But just to keep her as a focal point, which is not very hard because she's in the middle right there, but having the dress be brighter will only like help with that. You know, I just painted on the side of the painting. I better wipe that off or I'm going to get it on my glove. I'm kind of surprised I didn't get more on there. Okay. So something I'm kind of looking at now is I'm just seeing like there's this whole thing right here that comes out and then sort of turns on the edge, so maybe some sort of bigger shapes like that, maybe you can kind of pull them out a little more than what I'm actually seeing there. And, you know, something to keep in mind with this kind of stuff is the light could be a little different, you know, an hour or two before this picture was taken, and sort of show things pretty differently depending on the angle of the light and whether the sun was out or there was clouds covering it or whatever. So that's one of those cases where changing what's going on may look very much like it did at some point earlier in the day or whatever. kind of fade this sort of darker part a little bit more into the light. I didn't mean to do that. That was not a happy accident. That was just an accident. I was like, I probably have to fix that. But whatever, it's fine. Let me just get some, just the white, ma'am. Put it up there. Blend it in. Okay, so there's a little bit of kind of little detailed areas here that I'm going to throw in there. Like this one little bit of snow right here almost has the sort of texture of a rock, where there's sort of layers of like slate or something. Kind of like these little shallow steps that go down the sides every once in a while. Looks kind of nice. I mean on the reference, not on my painting. Painting, you were still working on that. I don't know if this is getting a little too dark right here, actually. You might want to pull back on that. Sometimes if I want to just get the paint to go on there without mixing too much with what's on there already, I'll just really go parallel to the surface like that. I need some more paint though, anyway. It's like running out of my white. All right, so this lead white, part of the reason I don't want to put out too much of it, it actually dries so fast that it kind of gets thick after a little while. You can still use it, but it's not as easy to move it around. So, okay, this up here, this could definitely go darker. Got that little like upside down Nike swoosh that mostly doesn't need to go too dark. Just getting the paint off of the brush right now. I'm gonna do that little area up there in a minute. Sometimes people will let the white area show through, but I don't think I've ever done that actually on mine. Especially for portraits, that's something that sometimes will happen for a really fast portrait, just leaving the white around the edge. Just like with the cloud comparison I was making before, when you're painting in the really pure white, you kind of don't really have much of anything on the brush. I mean, there's definitely other paint on the brush, but it's got to be a small enough amount that the white can really show up, or else it's not going to be, it's not really going to look white. Just need to check something. Just look over here. Okay. Something weird happening. But I guess it's alright. Okay. Whatever. Some technical stuff happening here. All right, so I'm gonna just keep going down here. Move up to that other spot in a minute, but and like fill this in a little bit, give it some subtle texture stuff going on. Definitely make some of this a little bit darker. I just push this one place right here in. So I don't really want to use more than one brush, but mainly because of the trying to make the white areas look white enough. But let me just keep going with this and darken this part here a little bit more. It's almost like painting rocks, really. Like I was talking about that one over there being like a rock, but it's almost like there's like kind of veins here and there, and different than human veins, but just like a little narrow area like right over here. And then I guess there is sort of like mountain sand or whatever it is on these different places, so it's maybe kind of acting in a similar way that you have for rocks, but kind of interesting just how you see these different patterns. So it's sort of showing up. Like I went out to Arizona and Utah years ago and seeing the land formations and how just from, I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 miles apart, you can see specific land formations that look so unique from one to the next. So I think that's the kind of thing it's easy to just take for granted in life. A lot of people don't really pay attention to it, but just like I was saying about animals before, so many nice things that you can kind of get used to just about the way animals are and plants and things, but those are some of the best things in life. is some real grandpa talk. So there's places down here that are gonna definitely get darker. But, I don't know, not how much I really need to mess with it right now. I guess I'll go back up to this part. So, sometimes I'll flip the brush over and have like a lighter color on the one side and then dark color on the other side, or whatever, different color. So there's kind of a lighter edge up here on the top of this sort of crest, and then comes down. It's just a little bit darker. Thinking I might be doing some glazing with this later on. This might be a nice project for that. Or just put a transparent layer of paint over top of things once it's dried out some more. Look at that coverage. It's when it just goes on there and it does what it's supposed to. I think there are definitely times where it's good to just pay attention when you do something and it's not exactly like the reference, but you really like how it looks. And sometimes it's best to just leave it. Maybe like a brush stroke that you really like or whatever. But the reference is kind of a conduit to whatever you're going to actually make, which no matter what you do, it's probably going to be at least somewhat different than what you're looking at, but at the same time it kind of has to become its own thing at some point. I mean, unless you're doing hyper-realism, in that case there's not really much you're adding to it, it's just looking at what's there and doing the exact same thing. Okay. And can I get some more lead white? I need a lot of paint for this, painting this size. Okay. I'm going to finish up what I'm doing here and then come back down this way. This whole spot right here can get a little bit darker, but not too much. I'll just wipe off what I've got on there. feel like this is kind of nondescript right now, so I've got to do something with that to make it kind of make a little more sense. I think I need to go in with a little more dark somewhere because the lights are pretty light. There's not really much lighter I can go with that. All right, well, I'm going to go back to that in a minute, just since I'm doing the light areas, just to stay with what's on my brush already. There's something going on right here I need to adjust. This is like in the wrong spot, so I'm going to just go over that. And then push it over. And there's this little place going out over here. Okay. Just throwing that chunk of white on there to cover up the area underneath. Not exactly what I need, but it's pretty good. You get the paint to cover more, you can just really put it on thicker. It's definitely going to look a lot different once I throw the kind of the black in there. I'm not messing with right now, but I'm gonna kind of bring down the saturation on the blue in some places. It's very much like a canyon right here that I painted one time. With the same types of shapes. Seen a video a little while ago of an iceberg breaking apart, and you couldn't really tell how big it was from the video until it hit the water, and just by how fast the water moved you could see it was extremely gigantic. It was like probably like half a mile long or something. It was really something. Well, I think if nothing else, I've got a pretty good base here. Work on all the other stuff I'm going to be doing to kind of like fix things up. And in some cases, you know, going over certain things once this layer is dry will be easier. I really want something to kind of stand out over what's on there already and not blend with it. In other cases, it's easier to just do it while it's still wet and go in there and adjust it and blend it. That's what I want for that part. Now, you know what? There's something here which I missed somehow before. There's a whole like lighter, sort of like a shelf going on here, like right there. Of course, that's not light enough. I have to just go back over this. Right around there. That's the wrong angle. It's not a right angle, it's a wrong angle. And it's going to have to go a little bit further over to the right. No, that's not too bad. Could still give it some more though. It's getting pretty chunky now. kind of bring this edge out here a little bit more also. Well, I think I'm going to be ending the stream pretty soon, guys. It's in 2.5 hours. So, I've got plenty more to do on this thing. But I think that'll be about it for tonight. Next time I will probably be still working on this. I mean, I'll definitely still be working on it, but I'll probably paint this again for the stream next time. And I'll have some more stuff done. See, wow, the left side is a lot more done than the right side at this point. I mean, it's still not done, definitely. But yeah, I'm gonna say I think that's about it for tonight. So hope you enjoyed watching. This was much different than a mostly finished painting, and you know, there's a lot more to go. It's going to be several weeks before this thing is done. So, if you want to come back next time, I would love to have you here again. So, you know, thanks for Anita, you just got here just now. Like I'm stopping. Well, thanks for coming, but. Here, I'll just show you real quick. So this is the new painting I'm working on. This is kind of obviously in the early stages. I was just kind of going in there and painting all the stuff you see on the left for the kind of background area of this iceberg or glacier that they're on. I don't really know what the difference is between icebergs and glaciers. I guess glaciers are maybe on mountains. I don't know. But, or maybe they're just at least not on the ocean. So anyway, yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to be working on this next time, I think, and probably I will do Thursday, maybe 6:30 again next week, Eastern time. I might adjust it a little, I don't know. It'll be around there somewhere, probably. So, well, Ryan wants me to keep going. Yeah, the clouds are going to be cool. I think it's going to be really interesting to just look at the clouds compared to the ground and, you know, see how similar they are versus how different. They're going to be a lot less kind of jagged looking, of course. And there's going to be kind of more kind of like a gray in there, I guess, compared to just like blue, white, and more like black on the bottom. But anyway, I want to just take a little look over here at Twitch and see, like, okay, I've got, well, I'm thinking, Malcolmberry, I think you're the only person on Twitch right now. So I think I'm not going to do a raid for one person. That would be kind of crazy. So, everybody, thanks for coming and watching, and I will hopefully see you next time. Okay, have a nice night.